Right. Hello again, everyone. We are on to our last unit here on the reproductive system. We're going to talk about the male reproductive system first. We've already had 2 quizzes last week on structures, male and female. So this is going to be a little bit of structure and some physiology. So starting with the obvious, the primary sex organs, male and female, testes for the male, ovaries for the female. The gonads produce the gametes, which are your sex cells, and they also produce sex hormones. Your accessory reproductive organs are going to include all the other reproductive system structures. It says here in the second bullet, although quite different, the joint purpose of the male and female reproductive systems is to produce offspring. Male reproductive role is to manufacture gametes called sperm and deliver them to the female reproductive tract. Female reproductive role, produce female gametes called the ova, which are your eggs, and then together they will form what is called a zygote, and that is your fertilized egg that gets 23 chromosomes from the male and 23 chromosomes from the female for a total of 46. You also have sex hormones, which play a role in the development and function of reproductive organs and sexual behavior and sex drives. I made this a long time ago. I have no idea why I added this. It came from the textbook, but we did have a size 1.5 inch long, 1 inch wide for the testes. Tunica albuginea is the outside structure. That's this white stuff here. And from the tunica albuginea, which is a connective tissue, it separates, and you can see each of these little lines in between. It cuts in between, and it separates the seminiferous tubules into what are called lobules. So each one of these is considered a lobule. Inside the lobules are, and you can see it labeled here, are the seminiferous tubules. So all of these are the tubules. Okay. There are approximately 1 to 4 tubules per lobule. Each tubule empties to the rotae testis, which is this area here. So all of those, this is where the immature sperm are housed and where the factories for making sperm are. And then they drain into this area. All of these will go in here. And from there, those will drain into this area and come in. You can see it one of multiple ways. And that whole area, this is all considered the epididymis until it straightens out. And then you have what's called the vas deferens. Now, you might have heard that term before. Vas is in vasectomy. Tomy, if you remember your root words, tomy is to cut. So we're talking about cutting that, the vas, which is the vas deferens. If you cut this right here, there will be, here, let's erase some of this stuff. If you cut the tube here, no sperm that's formed here, which drained to here, which drained to here, none of that sperm can get past that point. So obviously people have that to eliminate the possibility of fertilizing an egg during intercourse. So there won't be any sperm in the semen. Semen is more than just sperm. We're going to get to that later. So you'll have semen with absolutely no sperm. Now, some of the sperm can be on the other side of the cut, so you cannot have intercourse and expect to not impregnate the female until it's completely down to 0 on this side, because there can be sperm on this side. So that's when you hear about people having, they didn't think they were going to be able to have any kids, and they go, oops, but I had a vasectomy, and you still have to wait until all of the sperm have emptied from there. So the next slide, I call this the sperm journey. We already talked about where they're formed. in the seminiferous tubules. They'll travel to the epididymis, spending 20 days maturing and gaining the ability to swim. Through sexual stimulation, that will cause the sperm to pass to the vas deferens through a peristaltic wave that will send the sperm out of the testes through the vas deferens and ultimately out the penis into the vagina and up through the uterus to the fallopian tubes, and it's in the fallopian tubes that's actually going to fertilize the egg. So sperm have quite a journey. The spermatic cord has blood vessels. It also has nerves, along with the vas deferens. All right. At the end of the vas deferens, it's going to empty into what's called the ejaculatory duct, which passes through the prostate gland and merges with the urethra. At the moment of ejaculation, if you want to know the root words there, means to shoot forth, and that's where you get the peristaltic wave to move those out, move the sperm out. The urethra has 3 parts, and you can see them in the picture. You have the part of the urethra that is surrounded by the prostate, called the prostatic urethra, so that's going to be in here. You can see it labeled. The membranous urethra, which is the area between the prostatic urethra and the penis, which actually isn't even labeled here. It's a very, very small area right in here. And then the spongy or penile urethra, which is labeled, and then that runs the length of the penis. The urethra serves 2 systems, the urinary and the reproductive system, because it carries both sperm and urine, but never at the same time. During ejaculation, the sperm enter the prostatic urethra, and the internal sphincter, urethral sphincter, constricts, preventing urine from releasing from the bladder. It also prevents the sperm from going into the bladder, so it serves a couple purposes there. The goal of the sperm is to fertilize the egg. If it enters into the bladder, that's not going to happen. If there's urine in the urethra, it makes it more difficult for the sperm to survive because it's a very acidic environment. And there are ways to combat that. So this, and I guess I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. This gland right here, this tiny gland, it's called the bulbourethral gland, and it sends out a secretion that neutralizes, it's a mucus-like substance that neutralizes any urine that may be in this tract. And so during intercourse, this lubricates and exits first. Then following that, you're going to get sperm traveling the length of the tubes here, combining with the prostate, combining with the seminal vesicles, and entering in afterwards. So we could actually make that a different color if you want. So sperm are coming this way, combining with seminal vesicles, combining with prostatic fluid, and they're going to come in secondarily after the bulbourethral gland has released its fluid. So to the seminal vesicles, they're at the base of the bladder. They produce 60% of the fluid volume in semen. It does contain fructose, which is sugar, vitamin C, and some proteins. All of those nourish and activate the sperm. The sperm have a long journey, and they need to be able to survive during that time period, so this gives them a fluid to travel in, the sperm to travel in, so that they don't die. The duct from the seminal vesicle then joins with the vas deferens to form what's called the ejaculatory duct. This is a picture of the prostate gland, and you can see right in the center is the urethra passing through it. It's about the size of a chestnut, which is silly to even use that because I don't know anyone who really knows what a chestnut looks like. It encircles the upper part of the urethra just below the urinary bladder. It secretes a milky fluid through many small openings that help activate the sperm. So those fluids will join up with the prostatic urethra and exit. Some people will suffer from an enlarged prostate. Let's change the color back here, easier to see in red. Enlarged prostate is very common in elderly males, causes the gland to constrict on the urethra. So you can see if this gland enlarges around here, it's going to squeeze on the urethra, and it's going to make it more difficult to urinate. So that's a pretty common problem with men with an enlarged prostate. The first sign is difficult urinating. It can cause bladder problems, kidney problems, because obviously the bladder is feeding the urethra and the kidneys are feeding the bladder. So you can have a backup of urine in those areas, which can cause possible infections. Treatment includes surgery, drugs, or one that doesn't sound pleasant at all, inserting a balloon like a catheter into the urethral passage, and you can guess where that has to enter. And that balloon then inflates. They inflate the balloon, opens up the area, so it enlarges this opening here. They can also send in radio waves that incinerates the tissue. I would think of all of those, you'd want to try this one first to hopefully reduce the size of the prostate. This is talking about the bulbourethral gland, which I just mentioned, that pea-sized organ that sits at the base of the penis and releases the mucus to neutralize, this is where it says it here, neutralizes the contents of the urine. Also aids in lubrication during sexual intercourse. Semen contains a milky white secretion, which is a combination of sperm and accessory gland secretions. We talked about fructose, which is the sugar. It's a slightly alkaline substance at 7.2 to 7.6 pH. That helps neutralize the acid of the acidic environment of the vagina, which is at 3.5 to 4. So slightly alkaline helps neutralize it a little bit. There's also a hormone called relaxin, which is there to enhance the motility. Motility is the ability for the sperm to move and swim. The amount of semen per ejaculation is anywhere from 2 to 5 milliliters. And in that 2 to 5 milliliters, there's roughly 100 million sperm, 50 to 130 million sperm per milliliter. So you got to multiply these two numbers. So if we're at the low end, we've got 2 milliliters times 50, that's 100 million. That's the low end. At the high end, 130 times 5 is going to be considerably higher, over 500,000, over 600 million actually. So there's quite a range of sperm. If someone is considered to be infertile, okay, that means that their sperm count is less than 20 million. And remember, our low end here of normal, is 100 million. So we're talking about only 20 million. They can do what's called a semen analysis to determine what the issue is, where they'll take a sample. The male will provide them a sample of the semen, and they're going to do a sperm count. That's the big one that everyone is usually concerned with. Are they swimming? Are they moving like they're supposed to? Do they look like they're supposed to? Their morphology. The semen volume, is it normal? All those things that we talked about, fructose, proteins, vitamin C, is everything there that's supposed to be there so that they can survive the journey? Is the pH slightly alkaline? And is there sugar? Okay. They'll test the male first, usually, because it's an easier test, non-invasive. Females have to have an injection done to see if the tubes are open. They have to have blood work done to make sure their hormone levels are normal. But the fallopian tubes is the big one that they look for to make sure that they're actually open and that the sperm can travel through that and that the egg can travel through it. So that can be a common problem, but that's a little bit more invasive. And that's the last slide. So I will have some questions relating to this for this information, and that will be your assignment for Monday. Have a good day.